You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
There's a plaque outside the house where Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created Superman. It reads, "This is the house where Superman was born. Writer Jerry Siegel was a teenage boy who lived here during the Great Depression, one of the toughest economic times for Cleveland and the country. Jerry wasn't popular. He was a dreamer, and he knew how to dream big. With his best friend, artist Joe Shuster, these two boys created a bright fantasy world of spaceships and strange planets, and a city where a young man in red and blue tights could leap over tall buildings in a single bound. They called him Superman. They didn't just give us the world's first superhero, though. They gave us something to believe in." Happy Superman Day, and stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Yeah, I kicked it off with that plaque. I thought that was interesting. I actually saw the plaque posted on Brad Meltzer's page. He posted it not only because of Superman Day, but I guess he is one of the co-writers of that plaque, along with Mike Sangiacomo and then one other person whose name slips my mind. But the three of them came up with how that would be put together. So how's everybody doing today? Hello, Triple B. Hey, cool. Yes, Kyle?
Well, you know how in Pittsburgh they have the Rocky statue, and in Detroit they have the giant. I always say that it's the RoboCop fist, but I don't know what it's actually for. I think it's supposed to be Joe Lewis's fist. In Cleveland, they wanted to build a Superman statue. So the Siegel and Schuster Society was fundraising. The problem is every time they'd build a statue, it would get stolen because everybody wants a Superman statue for their house, like for their front lawn. They're like the big boy, the big boys out in front of Bob's Big Boy. Yeah. When those were always getting stolen, it's kind of the same thing. So instead, they renamed some roads and got a giant mural painted in the airport in Cleveland to celebrate that's where Superman was from. I was involved with that organization for a number of years. I've been to the house. I've seen the plaque. Superman's a big part of Ohio, even though we all know he wouldn't have protected it if we needed it.
Why do you say that?
Because TikTok seems convinced that Ohio doesn't exist, and I think Superman would buy into that.
Okay, I have no idea what you're talking about on that one, but we're just going to move on.
It's a joke about how there's nothing here.
Okay. Hey, Triple B. Hey, cool. Hey, Ed. How you doing? Ed says, hi, Dan McLean. That's what the CC called you when you announced your show. Dan McLean. Okay. And yes, that is to Joe Louis Fist. I'm trying to figure out, oh, hey, Canonis, good to see you. I'm trying to figure out that thing in Chicago, the reflective bean or whatever it is that they have up.
It's the bean.
Yeah. Well, it's called the bean, but it wasn't originally the bean.
No, it's a piece of public art that's always been called the bean.
Yeah.
Next to it, they have these things with people's faces on them, where at certain times of the day, they open up and water comes out. So it's like people are spitting at you, which I feel like is more of a New York thing than a Chicago thing, but I lost my phone there watching them one year while I was at C2E2, and it was the worst year I've ever had.
Okay, Kyle feels like sharing today, it seems, but he's going to be on in stores this week with me and Jay right after this. Then there will be a Minute to Skim It with the Space Cadet crew. And then Kyle's coming back because he's going to fill in for Mint Hunter, and he's going to do a unboxing and rant about some stuff because Kyle rants. So you want to stick around for that. Let's see what else we got going on. I realize I said share twice, but it's important. Okay, most people don't believe Ohio exists. Even people from Ohio don't believe it's real. Yeah, Jim Jordan doesn't seem to think Ohio exists. He's spending all his time in New York. Sorry, it's a little political there. All right, let's get into the news. Yeah, the internet does not fail me. I put in mint pancakes and it finds it. So, all right, let's get to the news. Paramount Television Studios is going to be taking a new stab at a Galaxy Quest TV series based on, of course, the DreamWorks 1999 cult classic. Now, the project, which is very early in the stages of development, is set up at Paramount Plus. So that's another streaming service you'll have to get if you want to watch it. There is no concept, no writer attached, nothing. But they've been trying to get a Galaxy Quest TV series off the ground for like the past 8 years. And the original idea was to just do a continuation of the movie, bring back the same cast, the original writer from the movie, the director from the movie, Robert Gordon and Dean Barasat. But that took a big hit to plans when it was in the works at Amazon back in 2015, but it got thrown off when Alan Rickman passed away in 2016. So that's why it's been kind of on the back burner, but they seem to be moving forward with it again. Let's see what else we got. We're a day away, well, tonight, tomorrow, of the season finale of The Mandalorian. And while the reception for the season so far has been mixed, last week's episode has gotten a lot of fan buzzing, talking about the fact that the episode's called Spies, but we only really see one spy, so who's the other spy? Is there one of the Mandalorians a spy? There's a lot going on there. Could it be the armorer? Could it be Axe Wolves? Wolves. So a lot of options there. But the big thing to take away from the upcoming finale is that Brendan Wayne, the grandson of John Wayne, and he's one of 3 people who make up Din Djarin. Of course, with Pedro Pascal and Lateef Crowder being the other 2. Brendan does all the gunfighting. Well, he said on his Instagram, this next episode is going to make you wish you hadn't asked for more. It might just hurt too much. So, sounds like it's going to be an emotional final episode. And we know that there's a 4th one already in the works, that Favreau is already working on scripts for it. So we'll have to see how all this works out. Hopefully they don't do a cliffhanger ending. I hate cliffhanger endings on season finale, at the end of a season. You want to do it between the penultimate episode and the finale? Great, but not after. So, all right, here's something interesting. Disney has added a new ASL option for watching MCU movies. On April 14th, they unveiled a new option on the 2015 Ant-Man movie, which has an ASL, American Sign Language, performer at the bottom right corner of the screen, translating all of the dialogue through the film. Now, this gives those with a hearing impairment the option of either doing closed caption or ASL, which is set to add kind of another layer for the viewer with how the language is interpreted. And a lot of people consider the ASL option more intimate than just reading the screen. This could lead to it being a standard thing for MCU projects. Marvel has been increasing its representation of the deaf community throughout Phase 4 with the introduction of 2 deaf characters into the cinematic universe, including from the Eternals, you have Makari, played by Lauren Ridloff, and in Hawkeye, we had Echo, played by Alaqua Cox, both of whom are deaf in real life. Now, Echo has her own series coming up, hopefully by the end of the year, and there's rumors out there saying the Eternal sequel is in the works, so we should get more of Echo and Makari soon. This is interesting. I just read the new Expanse comic, #1, which we're going to talk about on the next show. But Wes Chatham, who was on the Expanse and is a character in the comic, is said to have joined the cast of Ahsoka coming up, which is going to debut in August of this year. Chatham is said to be playing the right-hand man to Grand Admiral Thrawn, which, of course, who we know is being played by Lars Mikkelsen. In the recent trailer, we see Ahsoka Tano appears to be pulling in the crew of the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels, and it sounds like she's going to need it because the villain list is getting big. With Chatham and Mikkelsen already there, we've also got the return of Morgan Elsbeth, played by Diane Lee, who we met in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Plus, we're getting the Dark Jedis, Baylan Skoll, played by Ray Stevenson, and Shin Hati, played by Ivana Sakno. And then on top of that, you can add Gilad Palian, an Imperial officer played by Xander Berkeley, that was introduced this week in The Mandalorian, or the last episode, as part of the Shadow Council. So this is just getting bigger and bigger. So it sounds like Ahsoka's going to need some backup. We got an update on Sandman Season 2. According to Neil Gaiman, the scripts are written, casting for the first episode is underway, and the sets are designed with shooting to begin soon. So I know Kyle's a huge Sandman fan, so that should be making him very happy. We got some insight of the upcoming Agatha Coven of Chaos. Patti LuPone was on doing an interview, and she revealed that her character is going to be Lila Caleru, Caleru. Not a character I'm familiar with, but she is a character from the comics who had ties to Doctor Strange and Mordo. She was the keeper of the Book of Cagliostro, a book that we've come across in, I think we saw it in the first Doctor Strange movie. I think that's the page that's where the, I can't think of the bad guy's name, but Mads Mikkelsen's character tore the page out of, and I believe that's the book that in the What If series that Doctor Strange uses to get all his extra power and stuff. So she's the keeper of the Book of Cagliostro. She also has a daughter named Astrid, which could end up being another character, because we know that a few actresses have been added to the series as well, younger actresses that could be LuPone's daughter. So now LuPone described her character, first of which, as being very attractive, because all the drawings of the character in the Marvel Comics, just a stunning looking character. But she describes her character as a 450-year-old Sicilian witch whose power is divination and whose trial is tarot. So that's kind of interesting. Let me take a drink real quick. And finally, since it is Superman Day, James Gunn has posted an image of the Superman Legacy script with the caption, "I'm honored to be part of the legacy. And what better day than Superman Anniversary Day to dive fully into early pre-production on Superman Legacy. Costume, production design, and more now up and running." Now, this, of course, is a reboot of the franchise. It's going to be focusing on a younger Clark Kent, but it's not necessarily going to be an origin story. Gunn has stated that no film would go into production until the script was complete. Caecilius, thank you. Well, since it's now in pre-production, that's a good sign that the script is done. The film is set to be in theaters July 11th, 2025. And since they seem to like to have, close to a year for post-production, I would think that it's going to start filming maybe by the end of this year so that they can get things rolling. I could also see with what he's saying and the fact that Gunn's current movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, is going to be in theaters May 5th. It could free up time for him to do the casting search, and I could see them doing an unveiling of the new Superman at San Diego Comic-Con in late July this year. So that's just speculation, but I think that's a possibility. It says, that's 39 minutes long. Okay. Happy Superman Day. If you're out there, Jay, I know you're the Superman super fan. I didn't know you were a Superman super fan, Jay. Very cool. So you got a movie to look forward to. All right. Let's go ahead. We're going to take our first break, and we'll come back, and we're going to do a little breakdown of the upcoming Captain Marvel, or the Marvels trailer that came out last week. Got a little more information for it, so we'll drill down a little bit into it. So we'll be right back.
Did you know that every experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
What if Hans Gruber from Die Hard had to battle the Joker from Batman the Animated Series in a dance battle? Or who would win in a race between Baby from Baby Driver and Snidely Whiplash? If Austin Powers and Shrek found themselves in a hot dog eating contest, who would emerge victorious? These are the questions we talk about on Nerd Killer Warfare. Debate the most absurd questions you've ever heard in popular culture. Register now by scanning the QR code or visiting bit.ly/EXP casting.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Remember, stay tuned for In Stores this week, coming up right after this, followed by a Minute to Skim It, and then a special Hot Takes with Kyle filling in during the Mint Hunters hour and a half that he's normally on. So it should be a fun night. Before we go into our main story, I wanted to double check. I always do this on break. I go and I check the sources and stuff to see if there's any news that popped up. And this is just a couple of headlines that got my attention doing a quick scan. One is Netflix shuttering its original DVD by mail business in end of an era. I didn't know they were still mailing out DVDs. I thought that was already long gone, but to find out that that's just now being ended, kind of interesting. The big Dominion lawsuit with Fox has been settled for $787 million, not the $1.6 billion that they were after, but that's pretty good haul. And Fox has admitted to telling lies. There was one other story. Where was it? The TV series Will Trent was renewed for a second season on ABC. Now, I found that interesting because I just started watching the show. I got 2 or 3 episodes in on it, and I like it. It's a pretty straightforward classic detective series. It's got the standard, really smart detective, but he's got that flaw. They do that with all the, Monk and Sherlock Holmes. I mean, it's a pretty standard, we're going to make a guy that nobody can relate to because he's so smart, but we'll give him either an addiction or a disability or something that makes him relatable. And in this case, they made him dyslexic. So it's an interesting touch on the character. The chemistry between some of the cast is really good. I liked it. Like I said, I watched about 3 episodes over the weekend and really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I don't usually watch a lot of network shows right now, but that was pretty good, and they're getting a second season, so I'm looking forward to that. All right. I liked Will Trent better when it was called Monk. It's not quite the same. The character is very different. So, all right. He's still socially awkward. I mean, that's standard for detectives. Sherlock was always socially awkward, stuff like that. So, all right, we're going to take a look at the Marvels trailer that came out early last week. Now, I wanted to talk about it, but we got so much stuff going on this last week that I moved it to here. Plus, I wanted to do a little extra digging because, we had some new characters introduced. Now, I'll say it outright. I've recently rewatched Captain Marvel. I watched Miss Marvel when it came out. And I just rewatched WandaVision Sunday night, which will be the show, what we'll talk about on the show tomorrow, continuing my Marvel rewatches. This series looks fun to me, or the movie. The movie looks fun to me. Did Brie Larson get some work done in the collar area?
That's a Comic Collectibles joke, Dan.
Oh.
He's talking about the chest.
Okay. Totally, it feels like it's a cross between the first Captain Marvel movie and the Miss Marvel series, which I'm totally down for. I didn't dislike Captain Marvel. I thought that it had some good stuff in it, but I think the writing, directing was weak. I think Brie Larson was given a bit of a turd. So they never gave us a reason to identify with her or to bond with her. She was always kept aloof. And I think that was the problem. And again, it's not. The fact that the writers, directors weren't brought back, that they brought in Nia DaCosta to work on this instead, shows that Marvel acknowledges that it wasn't their best movie. Jay says, I didn't like Captain Marvel. I like Brie Larson, just not as Captain Marvel. But this trailer has me excited and wanting to watch Miss Marvel. I've wanted to anyway, but haven't had the time. Miss Marvel is a wonderful series. I went into looking at Miss Marvel thinking I would enjoy the action stuff and I would have to just kind of sit through the stuff with the family, and just kind of scan over it type of thing. And instead, what I loved about the series was the family dynamic, the characters, and the cultural stuff that they brought into it, things I knew nothing about, events in history that were never taught in school for me. Maybe some of you have seen it, but like the partition. The partition was something I knew nothing about going into this, and it becomes a major part of the story, and it opened up my eyes to a lot of stuff. And just, I really appreciated how well they dug into the culture, the Muslim culture. Iman Vellani has got a good chance to steal the show. I don't think Teyonah Parris is a pushover, and I think Brie Larson is going to have a better role this time. I still comes down to the character of Carol Danvers when we meet her in the first Captain Marvel movie. She is not sure of who she is. She has all this missing memory and stuff. And I think that she was directed to act standoffish. And by the time we get to the point where she's having a good rapport with Nick Fury, that I enjoyed. I actually thought that part was fun. But I think they never gave us, like I said, a reason to identify with her. They never gave us a save the cat moment. Even as we talked about last week in Iron Man, the fact that they started with him in the Humvee with the soldiers, joking around with them and having fun, and then getting caught in the explosion before we see the rest of him, made people like Tony Stark. Had it been the other way around, if they would have done it in sequence, where we see him blowing off the award ceremony and being kind of rude to Rhodey, and then hooking up with the reporter and treating Pepper badly. If that was our introduction to Tony Stark, I don't think the movie would have worked. And that's kind of what they did to Brie Larson there, is they never gave us a reason to connect to her. So I'm hoping they get a better job of it now. But the movie does feature Brie Larson back as Carol Danvers, Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau, and they don't give her superhero name yet. Ed says, I liked She-Hulk too. I liked She-Hulk. It was a little different. There were some parts I thought were a little over the top, but overall I liked She-Hulk. I wasn't as thrilled about the ending, because I think it really kind of, the fact that it fits in the MCU and that ending and how things are just changed kind of rubs me the wrong way. But everything else about it I really liked. But yeah, so there's two potential superhero names for Monica. She was originally called Captain Marvel, but that's kind of taken. They could call her Spectrum, which is another name she's had in the series. Or they could use Photon. Now, Photon is the call sign for her mom. So we see in the first movie, and we see also in WandaVision, when they show a plaque dedicated to Maria, it says Photon, Maria Photon Rambeau. So I think there's a good chance she's going to use the name Photon. The other thing they could do is they could steal one of Carol Danvers' other names, because she's actually had a lot of them. Carol Danvers went by Binary, Warbird, Miss Marvel, and Captain Marvel. I think there's one other one I'm forgetting, but they could borrow either Binary or Warbird as well. So there's a lot of options what they could end up having Monica go by. We also are going to get the big screen debut of Aman Vellani as Kamala Khan. Sam Jackson is back as Nick Fury. Zawe Ashton is going to be playing a Kree named Dar Ben. Daniel Ings will be playing a Kree named Tyrone. And that name just is silly to me. Tyrone, really? And the family returns. Miss Marvel's family returns, played by Zenobia Shroff, Mohan Kapoor, and Sagar Shaikh. And of course, Goose is back. The Flurkin returns, and it looks like with some potential offspring, which makes me wonder, where do you find a mate? He didn't like hook up with a house cat, did he? Or like some of the cats Flurkins, some aren't. I mean, there's so many questions now. Just seeing that litter of Flurkins going down the stairs, I really got to wonder about that. There's some rumors, some interesting rumors. Two people that might show up in the movie. The first would be Tessa Thompson, who may also be appearing as Valkyrie, and this started because Zenobia Shroff posted some pictures of herself celebrating with the rest of the cast and the crew of the film on set, and in one of those images, Thompson can be seen in her Valkyrie outfit. So there's a chance we're going to get Valkyrie in the Marvels, which would be kind of interesting. Heard a theory as to why Goose scratched Fury. It was to mark him from the incoming Skrull invasion. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I've got something about Fury we're going to talk about in a minute. But the other person that's rumored is Lashana Lynch, returning as Maria Rambeau. Now, we know she died during the blip. We find that out during WandaVision. But they could always do a flashback or something like that. And the reason there's a rumor of that is if you go to the IMDb page and you look at the crew, there is somebody listed there as a dialect coach for Miss Lynch. Lashana, of course, is English, so she has to drop the accent and try to pick up a little bit of Cajun when she's playing Maria. Now, in the trailer, the teaser, it's not a full trailer, it's a teaser, but we get to see the space station that Fury has been hanging out on, and they call it Saber. Now, this is a new creation for the film, and it's likely Sword's satellite. Sword has a space station in the comics, but it's not called Saber. And the fact that Saber looks like it's an acronym, we'll have to find out what it stands for. I'm sure it's probably something peaceful like research. The R is probably Earth and Research or something. But it's probably like the first line of defense against aliens. Anybody remember what the ship is or the satellite is called in the comics? I want to say it's like the Peak or something. But Sword, of course, was introduced in WandaVision, which is where we met the grown-up version of Monica. And something interesting, Monica has this problem. In WandaVision, she keeps trying to go through, she starts the whole thing off. Her first appearance in the third episode has her reaching her hand into the hex wall and then being sucked in. Later in the series, when the truck won't go through, Peak 7. Okay, so it is the peak, but peak 7. Okay, thank you. When later in the series, when she can't get that NASA truck through, she ends up pushing her way through. So we've established the fact that you give her a big shiny object in front of her that might be, that she's going to try to push through it. And she does that here. Just, so I thought that was kind of interesting that it seems now to be her thing. Ooh, look, this bright, shiny thing in front of me. Let me touch it. That's how people die. That's like the start of every horror movie. Another interesting thing is when that happens and we see Fury walking across his office on the space station, if you look on the desk, you see two interesting items. Number one, you see the pager that was originally his that Carol upgraded so he can call her anywhere in the galaxy. So he still has that. So that's cool. But the second thing, floating in what looks like a glass of water, but it might just be some kind of liquid, sterilized liquid or something, is a floating eyeball. Now, that made me think back to Captain Marvel. At the end of Captain Marvel, Coulson walks in with a collection of eyes for Fury to choose from. But then I thought back to Captain America the Winter Soldier. Oh, we were talking about a few minutes ago, Leonard, about the Monica Rambeau code name. I'm leaning towards Photon because that was her mom's name. But it could be Photon, could be Spectrum, or she could steal one of Carol's extra names like Binary or Warbird. But I'm leaning towards Photon. But getting back to Nick's, the floating eye. So they send him these eyes, and we think, okay, he got the eye scratched out by Goose, but it doesn't. It's not scratched out. It's just damaged because in Captain America the Winter Soldier, when he's bypassing security, he uses his bad eye because nobody would think to put that in the security thing. They took out his normal eye access, but not the bad eye. So there is an eye in that socket. So why did they give him a glass eye? Or a series of glass eyes to choose from? And why does he have one on his desk? I mean, did he choose the milky looking glass eye and then decided to wear? Did he put an eye patch or a glass eye in and wears an eye patch? I mean, that's kind of bizarre. So that's a question I don't think they've ever answered. I'm fascinated that Kamala recognized Nick Fury through the space station window because isn't he supposed to be a super spy? How does a teenager from Jersey know it's him immediately and that he's connected to the Avengers? Was this something that Scott Lang talked about on his podcast? And the character swapping thing. This is something that was already established in the history of Captain Marvel, but just in a very different way. This pertained to Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, and Rick Jones. Rick Jones is this great teenage character that's been in the Marvel comics for a long time, who was originally the teenager that drove into the explosion site that made Bruce Banner run out to try to save him and get hit by the gamma rays. He then teamed up with Captain America, posing as a sort of Bucky, not really, but as a sort of, and then he hooks up with Marvel. So the guy has been like the sidekick for 3 different heroes. And they ended up with these nega bands, the gold bands Captain Marvel wears. And when you hit them together, they would swap places. So Marvel would be in this weird like pocket dimension, and Rick Jones would be in trouble, and he just slapped the bands together, and suddenly there's Captain Marvel. So I know a lot of people thought that maybe Kamala's bands were the nega bands because in the comics she doesn't have any kind of bands like that, or her power isn't from their bands. So it's possible that they're still tied to, or they're still the nega bands. They just unlocked her mutant powers, and also it appears that the villain is wearing one as well. So there may be both of them have been found. But here it doesn't feel like it's a nega band thing. It feels more like quantum entanglement triggered when they use their powers. Now, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I think it's going to make for some very funny moments. And I think it's going to be for some really interesting action scenes, like we see in the trailer, where they're kind of hopping around while fighting, fading in and out, which would be very difficult to fight against. So, all right. Well, and that who the villain is. We know that Zawe Ashton is going to be playing Dar-Ben, and that she's carrying the universal weapon, the hammer or staff, carried by Ronan the Accuser, and carried by all of the accusers. There's multiple accusers in the comics, and they always have that staff. So there's a good chance that Dar-Ben is the new accuser. Now, the character first appeared back in the 90s in the pages of Silver Surfer. Written by Ron Mars, art was Ron Lim, and the character was initially depicted as a man. He was a disenfranchised Kree general that, along with Ael Dan, another Kree, and several other Kree soldiers, they staged a coup to become the new rulers of the Kree Empire after the death of the previous empire. This is a death that Dar-Ben actually made happen using a robotic Silver Surfer, and his plan was to lay blame on the Skrulls and then take over. By the way, the best part of this whole story is that the previous emperor, who was completely inept, was actually named Clumsy Follop. Clumsy Follop. Yeah, not kidding. Now, Dar and Alden were partners, and they became kind of joint emperors in being the new leader. But they were both killed by Deathbird during Operation Galactic Storm, which was another big Marvel event. Now, the odds of them taking any of that storyline, the robotic Silver Surfer, any of that, I don't see it happening. I think we're going to end up with just them borrowing a character's name in the same way they did for Moon Knight when they took Arthur Darrow's name and then made him a completely different character. So that's what I'm expecting. Now, The Marvels is being directed and co-written by Nia DaCosta, who did the remake of Candyman, and it will be in theaters November 10th. So, all right, we're going to take our second break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to hit some key Superman collectibles for Superman Day. Be right back.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.
Comic Collectibles is here for you every Wednesday with AR Comics for two very important reasons: to sell you rare, one-of-a-kind comics that you'll love, and to confuse AR with old man talk. You see, Rex and John are, how should I put this, ancient as the roots of the mountains. So every week, Rex and John fill in AR in yet another area of pop culture that he missed because he's too young, just didn't have the time, or just really doesn't care about. It's a real public service they provide. Come buy some super rare and unique comics, while old men explain long-dead sci-fi shows to a younger man making that confused puppy face. Every Wednesday from 6 to 8 Eastern with Rex, John, and AR Comics. Comic Collectibles on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
Programming on the EXP is made possible by viewers like you, or your local comic shop, or that Kickstarter you backed, or the publisher you like, or comic industry professionals who want to share a message with the world. Really, anyone who wants to advertise with us can. If you're interested in seeing a product you know and love, or are creating, or are publishing, or are involved with, advertised here on The Experience, and having your message shared with our viewers, please reach out by scanning the QR code below or visiting our website and using the contact form.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Hey, do me a favor. Hit those like and subscribe buttons down there, especially the like button, the thumbs up, stuff like that. Really helps me out when you do that, and I know you guys are liking the show. So I would appreciate it. And please tell your friends about it. Let's get some more people in here. All right. Ed asked if Jay had all these issues that I'm going to show. I don't think Jay would be working here if he did, because I went with some of the most expensive Superman books just because of the fun of it. So mostly a few reprints, of course. There you go. All right, let's get rolling. First up, of course, Action Comics #1 from 1938. This is not only the first appearance of Superman and Lois Lane, it's also the first appearance of Zatanna's father. So if you turn out to be somebody who loves Zatanna and wants to collect her entire line and then went, well, I should get her dad's stuff too, you're not. It's not happening, because the high-end value on this book is $4.6 million. Median is still $1.1 million. Low-end Thrasher copy, still going to cost you about $185,000. So unless you're Dominion and you just won that Fox lawsuit, you're not going to get a copy of Superman or Action Comics 1. All right, next one. Action Comics #6 from 1938. This is actually the first appearance of Jimmy Olsen, though he's not named here. But it's kind of an interesting issue. He's just known as an office boy at that point. He gets a name later on. But it's still worth $39,000. $9,000 for a median copy. $3,000 for a Thrasher issue. After that, we have Action Comics #7. The reason I put this one in here is this is, this is only the second cover appearance of Superman. So even though Superman, everybody thinks he was a huge hit, he didn't appear on the next 5 covers, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it was, it wasn't that big a deal. Now, and this one goes, those aren't the right prices. Did I forget to do the prices on that one? Give me a sec. Yeah, I forgot to do the prices on that one. Those are not the right prices, so I'll get those in a second. Let's move on to the next one. Superman #1. Superman getting his first headlining series came about a year later. This one's going for $3.1 million. $976,000 for a median copy. Still going to pay about $110,000 for a low end. After that, we have, this is interesting. This is the New York World's Fair comic #2. So this isn't even the first one. It's from 1940. And this is the first time that Superman, Batman, and Robin, even just Superman and Batman, ever appeared together on a cover. They hadn't appeared together in a story or anything like that. This was the first time they were drawn together. This one still goes for about $14,000 in the high end. Median's about $3,000. You pay about $1,000 for a Thrasher copy. All-Star Comics #7 in 1941. This was the first appearance of Superman and Batman in the same story. It's the first time they ever teamed up. This is going on the high end for about 4.4 thousand, another 1.1 thousand for median. Still going to cost you $370 on the low end. All-Star Comics number 36. This was the first time Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman all appeared in the same story, and they appeared on the cover together. This one's going to go for about $4,700, still about $1,400 for a median copy, and about $470 for a low end. Give me just 1 second. That's going to bug me that I didn't have the right prices on that one. Which one was it? I had the wrong price on. That was Action Comics 7. Yeah, Action Comics 7 is $23,000 on the low end, $232,000 on the high end. So a little more than $2-3. But all right, Superman number 16 or 61 in 1949 is when they introduced Kryptonite. So the character was out over 10 years before they brought in Kryptonite. The high end on this one is about $1,800. Median's about $600. Low end's about $180. All right. Next up is Superman 76 from 1952. This is the first time that Batman appeared in a Superman book. So they appeared together in anthology books, but this was the first time that he showed up in a Superman title. And this is also where they figure out their secret identities of Bruce and Clark. This one's going for about $3,400. Mid-range is about $1,100. You can pick a low-up copy for probably a little over $300. Action Comics number 241 in 1958. This was the first appearance of the Fortress of Solitude. High end on this is $600, mids about $180, low end's only about $60 on this one. I find it interesting that these things that we all just consider canon for Superman that have been around forever weren't in the initial stages. This one came 20 years. The Fortress of Solitude didn't show up for 20 years after the original character. So I think those things are kind of interesting. And of course, Brave and the Bold, number 28 from 1960. This is the first appearance of the Justice League that involved Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Aquaman. This is a $74,000 book. You could maybe get a median copy for around $9-10 grand. You're still going to, even a low-end copy is going to cost you over $2 grand. So there's some pretty interesting Superman books. There's more. I mean, again, I'm still blown away by the fact that Superman didn't appear again on the cover of Action Comics until number 7. That means they had months and months before they went back to that character. So I'm just fascinated by that, you know. And he says, Dan, of all the live action Superman actors, do you have a favorite? For me, it's George Reeves. I always see his face and hear his voice whenever anyone talks about Superman. See, that's tough for me to come up with a favorite because I think each of them have qualities that stand out different from the others. I think George Reeves was probably the closest to the comics that were coming out at the time. And I think he was very good. I thought Christopher Reeves was good. I'm not as in love with his portrayal as a lot of people are. I think he did a great job, but it was a little on the campy side to me, and I've never been a campy fan. I really like Henry Cavill as Superman, but I think he was written too dark. So I would have loved to see someone else work with him. Brandon Routh, I think, got the short end of the stick on that, is that he was forced to try to be Christopher Reeves. So I think later on when he did stuff with the Legends of Tomorrow. I thought, even when he played Superman, I thought those were better than that. Eddie says the reason that it took that long to get sales figures back on the popularity of the character, they actually thought it was going to be a bust. There's a great documentary on that. That makes sense. Bud Collyer, the radio voice. Yeah, Bud did a good job. I think Tyler Hoechlin, who's currently doing it on Superman and Lois, is doing a really good job. I thought Tim, the voice actor who does the new animated Adventures of Superman or Superman the Animated Series.
Tim Daly?
Yes, Tim Daly. Thank you. And George Newbern. I don't think there's been a really bad Superman actor. I think they all give it an earnest try, but I really liked what Henry Cavill was doing. I just would like to see him get a different person, but we'll have to see who they get. I watched all the Superman or the Lois and Clark episodes too, and I thought Dean Cain was great. I'm not so thrilled with his politics now, but I thought he played a good Superman. I thought Tom Welling did great. Darren Criss in the Superman Man of Tomorrow did a really good job. So yeah, it's hard to say favorite because I think I really liked Man of Steel because it was a serious movie. It has flaws, but I like the tone of it a little better than the other appearances because I'm not, like I said, I'm not into camp. I don't like situation comedies and stuff like that. And the whole playing the secret identity and, oh, Lois, I tripped. I never liked that. So if that's downplayed, you're going to get my attention more than some of the stuff they did. So it says I ignore politics as much as possible when it comes to actors. Otherwise, it ruins shows for me. Good point. No bat shark repellent for Dan, I see. Hey, I watched all the Batman 66s, but I like my characters a little more serious. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. I will be right back with Jay and Kyle to talk the new books coming out this week. And then tomorrow we will do the rewatch of WandaVision. And on Thursday, Mandalorian season finale. So stick around and we'll be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.